everyone, and welcome to Painting Crafty. If you're new here, my name is Melanie, and my returning creative friends, I'm so glad you're here too. Today we're going to be working on a new birthday flower. This one is for the month of July, and it is a Larkspur. Larkspur kind of reminds me of a delphinium, where it's got those clusters of groups of flowers that are down below, and then at the very top they have the little buds that are those little round ball areas. They're pretty simple to create. I'm going to break down the steps so you can follow along easily, and then I'll be showing you a simple watercolor technique to put the color on. But really, once you have it drawn, you can use whatever art materials you like to create with, because once you have it drawn, the shape is there. All you have to do is apply the color. You can also just do it in pencil, and there's many people who follow along and like to do pencil drawing too. So depending on what you want to do might depend on whether you put it on canvas, smooth paper, or like a little bit rougher watercolor paper. Well, let's go ahead and start with breaking down the steps. Before I get started, I wanted to mention I do have a Ko-fi page, which is like a Patreon page, and that's where I host my subscription for all of the tracers that I create and my draw-alongs on my YouTube channel. You can go over there. It's easy to find, easy to subscribe to. It's a very reasonably priced subscription to be able to get all of the line drawings for the items that I draw on my YouTube page. Well, let's break these shapes down. So let's take a look at what the Larkspur flower looks like. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 petals on each flower. Is drawn that way, so there's 5. You don't necessarily need to see all of the flowers. I'm going to be showing you a very simple way to do this because I did a smaller one, but if you want to make yours bigger, you can actually put more details into your flower. So let's take a look at the flower itself and the petals. So we have this 3 shape here at the top. So when you go ahead and draw that, what helps sometimes I find is just to draw a simple shape that looks like that. So this would be my center. Like so, the arms and the head is what I kind of call it or refer to it. And I want to put my arms on first. So I'm going to come out. A Larkspur kind of has a little bit of a point for its petals, and then it comes back. We're going to have it touch there. And then I'm going to do this arm. I'm going to come up, do that little bit of a point, and then come back. Now I'm going to be drawing that center part. I'm going to come here, do this part here. Oops, I will need more of a point, and then come back down. So there we have our little petals there. Now we have these 2 that are underneath. And what I'm going to look at is starting this petal here. If you want to do these little lines that like these would be the legs, if you would consider that, where these would be your little stick. It's kind of like drawing a stick person where you're going to have, these are my legs. So I'm going to have this petal start here in the center. So part of it's going to be tucked behind. I'm still going to do that little bit of a point. And then I'm going to come back. I'm going to round it around and touch there in the middle. Now this one I'm going to start like it's be tucked behind here. So I'm going to start in my middle over here. And I'm going to do that same thing where I'm going to have the point and then I'm going to come back. So I have my petal shapes there is how I'm going to draw that one. And then you can do a little bit of a center work that has maybe 3, 5, something that would be in the middle for my centerpieces. Now that's how you would draw it straight on. This is how you're going to draw it to the side. So it looks like you're seeing partially of maybe it's sitting a little bit more flat. You can start out with do the same thing where you're going to have your head and your arms this way, but this time you're going to draw the head one first. So you're going to come out and around, so you're going to see it come all the way down. Now I'm going to start here on my arms. I'm going to start them partial behind my centerpiece here. I'm going to come up and stop. Still got those little points on there. This one's coming off to the side. We're still going to have points coming around. Now we have to lay in these ones right here, the more flat ones. So I'm going to take a look, find the center part. I'm going to come up to a point and make a leaf shape or a petal shape this direction, and then I'm going to come around this direction and then erase what might ever be inside of there. Okay, so I'd erase the centers, and then I'd end up putting my little round dots here, my little stamens in the middle, and I have more of a flat flower that's laying flat. So you can see the difference of what this one was straight on. This one is more towards the side. Now you can also make it where you even have one that's even more sideways or scrunched down. And the way you're going to make this one is you're going to start with a bowl shape like this. Then you're going to come up and around. So this would be the pointed part of my flower. Where I normally would have that point to my flower, this is my pointed part of my flower. Now we would draw the other parts inside of there. So I would start here. This would be the center part. We're going to come up, come back down. So we have that little point there. Then we're going to make one sideways and come back down. Now we're going to come up with this one. We're going to make it a little shorter because we've got to get that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 petals in. We're going to come around and then touch, and then this one's going to be even a little bit shorter and come around. Now you can tuck a few of those little stamen parts inside of there to make it look like it's turning around. So that's how you make one that looks like the petal is even more turned up and around. All right, we have our basic ones there. This is a sideways one where it's partially open, where this part's here could be green, so it's like opening up. So these would be green and not necessarily petals. You're only just seeing one petal, so it would still have the round part here. These would be green, kind of like little banana peels that are opening up and around your flower. Those would be green. And that would be the color of your flower. So you can do a small part like this. Now this is even a smaller one, a smaller part that hasn't opened up. It has this kind of this heart shape. This would be the color of your flower. And then this would be the green part that's hanging on to your stem. So you can have a little even partial opened one. Now this one is very closed and it sits at the very top of your flower. It's going to be a roundish shape like this. I'm going to create these little parts here, these little partitions that make it look like it's still closed. I'm going to start at the top here, and then I'm going to come down, make a little V there, and then make the opposite direction. And then there's going to have a line that comes off. So those can be varied sizes. They don't have to be all the same, but you can see that's an upside down V there and then an upside down V there. It's kind of fun to have that centerpiece a little bit off centered, so it's not exactly smack dab in the middle of your flower, but it can be in the middle if you'd like it to have to look that way. So I can have my smaller pieces up, and then I would include it. I included this little shape here where it was partially open. I threw a little bit of those in. But when I started my flower, I started the big ones. These are those half ones. So this is this one over here. Pop those in, pop them in, and then just build your flower as you're going up. Now the Larkspur does have kind of a bigger leaf to it. Kind of reminds me of a maple leaf, but slightly different. I started by building it with these little lines. So then that helped me decide where my leaves are going. So first of all, I did this V shape that comes like that. Those are my top ones. Then I made two that were coming down, but short or a little longer than my top ones that I drew, but not as long as my middle one. And then this is going to be my middle one here. That just helps me decide, shows me where I'm going to be developing my leaf. So to do these little leaves, I'm going to act like that's the center vein of my leaf. I'm going to start with a U shape, and then I'm just going to do some jiggle-jaggle lines and end with a point. And I'm going to come down with some jiggle-jaggle lines. Now I want to do that curve shape again. So this little curve or U shape, that's going to be building my next leaf. I'm going to do some jiggle-jaggle lines and getting a little bit smaller as I'm coming towards the bottom because I'm going to be making a point, and then come back down and then getting a little wider. Do that little bit of a curve or that U shape. And then I'm going to be starting here. I'm going to be getting a little wider and then getting a little narrower as I come down. So you can see how it is building kind of like a maple leaf shape, but with some extra little curves. So I'm coming out to a point, coming in, making sure I get my little curve back, and then coming around. And there is my little leaf that could be onto my onto my Larkspur. So those are a bigger shape. Now I'm going to be doing some, the one I'm going to be showing you is more of a simple form of the Larkspur painting. I like a loose flower, but you could actually do these with acrylic paint, or this one I popped in with a little bit of, that shows up for me. My lighting's a little off. I'm so sorry. A little bit of a colored pencil. So since I was using just a regular copy paper, it's nice and smooth. Copy paper works perfect to do a little sketchbook type of drawing with colored pencils because it's nice and smooth and you can get a nice deep coloration with your pencils. So that is something to keep in mind if you like doing color pencil work. This paper works well for that. Well, let's go ahead and work a little bit on this card. So the card, the way I developed it is I drew a box first all the way around my edge. That's where I put my letters, the happy birthday, happy birthday. So I created a border around that part. Then I used a round circle. This is just a big lid. I want to say this is a, let's see what this would be. This is about a 4, not quite 4.5 inch lid. So at least a 4.5 inch, but I'm working on a 6x6 paper. So it doesn't really matter, whatever might fit your paper the best. Use that type of a circle. And I put that in the center and I drew around that lightly as well. Now, if you're going to be using those types of drawing with the circle and using a pencil and making some borders, you're going to want to use a kneaded eraser to be able to pick up some of the graphite that's left on your paper so you can make light lines and not have such heavy pencil lines. Plus, this one will not smear the carbon around. If I end up using this, which I like using this pencil eraser, but not for lightening my lines because it would smear on my paper more. So I tend to save this for when I'm going in and doing a really nice heavy erasing, but the other one I use is to be able to pick up lines. So that is one of those erasers you're definitely going to want to have in your toolbox, both of them actually, to be able to create a nice watercolor look. So I have my Larkspur on. I just did this freehand. I just counted the number of letters that I needed and figured the K would probably be the best to be able to put in the center. And that's where I put it. And then I built my words out from the side. Happy birthday. I just did a very whimsical style where some letters are uppercase, some are small, lowercase, mixed up the font a little bit, and that's what's going to make it good. I don't consider myself a great lettering person, so that's what just helps me do it to make it look better is by changing up the font, big, small. Not everything is the same. And this is just created by creating on any of that thing that's a down stroke gets thickened. So that line gets another layer of pen work on it. So I have my base set up and ready to go. Let's work on the Larkspur itself. Now this is just a simple little drawing, not a whole lot of detail in here, but I did come in and I did do my leaves lightly. So I just did a general shape of coming up and then lightly putting in those forms and not really worrying too much that they looked exactly what and how I wanted them, because this is a very loose watercolor Larkspur. So I did one this direction and then I put one over here because I wanted to fill up my space, give my parts right here a big space to be able to sit and build my little Larkspur on. So I'm going to want some that are behind and some that are forward. So this one I put forward. This is you'll see most of it. This one I'm going to have behind. So I'm just creating a little bit, again, those shapes. And mostly it's just going to be the color that's going to be behind what you're going to see here. And then I did another third one here, and that's going to come off to the edge off this direction as well and come down. I'm just going to lightly pencil that in. Okay, so I have my little cluster of leaves. That's this little part here, one this direction, one behind, and then this one is behind too. That's what'll make a nice grouping, is if you can have one that's forward at least, and then choose the other ones to be behind. That will look like a nice grouping. Now to start with my flower, I just drew lightly down the center for where my middle one was going to be. And then I put in the Larkspur that's a full one. So I want to be able to draw this particular one. So that was like the head, the arms, and then those two legs is what I'm going to be drawing. So I'm going to be looking at putting in like the head, the arms, and the two legs. So that gives me my shape. I'm going to start with my arms first because those are the ones I will see mostly of this way. And I'm only going to really hand draw maybe this one right here to begin with. And the rest of them I'm just going to be plopping in with my color and not worrying that there's too much structure. All right, let's go ahead and start with this lovely shade of purple. Where's my color guard, my color chart? This is just called Violet. This is the Rubens paint. So I'm going to be using this color here, and then I'll be going down into my other shades of blue over here. So I'm going to start with this one. It's a nice punchy color, so it has a lot of pigment in it right away. I'm going to mix it to tea consistency. When I do watercolor, it's always a good idea to have like a paper towel in your hand so you can test your color, see where you are, if you need to add more water or not, or take some of the color off before you put it on. That just allows a little bit more control of your color. I'm going to come in and just put some of this on. Now watercolor is going to dry lighter, so what you see now isn't what you're going to get. It's going to dry a little bit lighter, so just pop those colors in. What I'm doing for my brush is I've got a little bit of pressure on my top when I first touch, just a tiny, and then you can add more pressure and pull. So light texture, pull that towards you, and then come around. So I'm going to just do a few of these shapes that have that point, because Larkspur does have that little bit of a point. And as I go up, I'm going to get slightly smaller as I'm going up. And now I'm not going to really worry about my shape. I'm just going to be putting in some of that purple color and then making sure that I have a few points here and there, so it still continues on with that look of that flower. It has some points. And then I'm even going to get more loose by just kind of patching in my color. Still going to be having a few points here and there. I'm leaving some white. I'm not coloring it all in. I'm giving myself some room to be able to expand my flower and my colors if I want to. Okay, and I'm going to leave some room at the top because I want to be able to put some of those little green pieces in. Now this is the time where I'm going to switch my color and I'm going to add the next ones in. I'm going to do a little bit of this blue color. This blue is called Permanent Violet, still in that family, I guess. And I'm going to do this to tea consistency as well. This is another powerful color. I'm going to give this a tap. Now my colors are still kind of wet, so they might blend together, but it's okay if they do because those colors still like each other. They're next to the color wheel, so they're not going to be making mud. And I'm going to just pop in some of these shapes. Again, I'm going to make sure I have some that are slightly pointy. And now this one I'm not even going to worry about even that much, that I have a lot of those petal shapes. This is just behind, so it's going to be even farther back, and you're not going to be able to see a lot of that color, or the shapes, I guess is what I really want to say. Let's go ahead and put some of these in for the one that's behind here. Now my center purple has had a little bit of chance to dry, so I'm going to come in and add the next layer. Same color, I'm just have a little less water, and we're just going to be building it up. And by having that next layer on there, this is like painting the shadows. So I'm looking at where I want the shadows of my flowers to be. Okay, so this is the blue, and I'm going to come in and add a little bit more blue to these. Let those dry a little bit and see what we're getting. Now with some of your watercolors, you can lift them a little bit too. Like if you want to come in and try to lift some of the color, just take a clean water on your brush, give it a squeeze, and come in and touch that color. And some of the colors you can lift if you would like to try to lighten them just a little bit. I thought I wanted to lighten mine just a little bit. So that's what I've got started with my colors. Now I'm going to take up a little bit of green. So let's work, I'm going to work on the very top ones first, and then I'll come down here and work on my other leaves. Now with watercolor, you always start with your lightest color and then work your way dark. So I'm going to just pick up kind of this medium yellowish green. I'm going to give that a tap, and I'm going to come in and do some of those little balls that would be at the top of the flower. I'm just going to pop in some of those shapes to create that little seed ball that's at the top. And just getting kind of that cone, continued on with my cone shape. And I'm going to take that same color and come down here and put in my first little bits of that color for my leaf. That's a good layer for the beginning of my green. I'm going to go ahead and pick up just a little bit darker green. And while my leaf is still wet, I'm going to take that next layer. I'm just choosing the color that's kind of down on the next one down. I'm going to give this a tap. And I'm going to be just tapping that color in. And because my paper is wet from my first color, it's going to be doing that, I call it a little bit of watercolor magic, where the colors are going to move in together and create their own colorations without me doing a lot of work at all. So I'm going to just put this layer on. I'm not trying to cover up everything I just put on. I still want to be able to see some of that. And I'm going to add a few of these up here too, add to my green little bits. I'm going to create more structure with these when I come in with my pen work. I'm going to switch my brushes. I was using the number 6 Velvet Touch brush. I'm going to bump up to, I think I'm just going to use my 10. And I'm going to create this little outside border around it by using some of the same colors that I used before. I might want to lighten up my blue just a tiny bit by mixing it with a little bit of sky blue just to dull it down just a tiny bit. And I'm going to come in with this light color here. Now my paper is dry. I don't want to wet it before I start because I really want to kind of control where my colors are going. So I'm going to be mixing a little bit of that light purple. I'm following that border around. That's why I left that little pencil mark by the birthday ones. I didn't want to get rid of it all because I wanted to create a border with that. Okay, so I'm having my purple. I'm going to pick up some of that blue and mix that there. And I don't have to feel like I need to be 100% exact with my color. I can be slightly off, but still creating that same shape of the square and the circle. I'm going to let that dry, and then I'll come in and do a little bit of ink work. I'm going to be using the Micron 01 pen. It's a permanent ink pen. It won't move around if you get it wet, and that's what I use for my other writing as well, is I use the Micron 01. So I'm going to come in and make my detail work with this. So I'm going to start with these little top balls here and make a little lines that look like they connect. Now even if my lines aren't exact and the balls aren't there, I can make it look like they're connected. So I can even go off to the side, even though I don't have any there, where I did the green, and add some in if I thought I needed that. I could add it in that way. So I'm still creating those little ones that I showed before, and I can come up and just even add a little bit more on there. I can come in and do the same thing by coming past my line work to create a flower shape or a petal shape that might not even be there, but I can create it with my pen and add the details that way. I try not to follow my lines exact. For me, I like that very much, that hand quality sketch look. So that's what I'm going for, and a real loose look. So I can create that by just being very loose with my line work and not necessarily copying it all the way, and even making up some line work that's not even there. So I can just sketch it in. I can go over my line work multiple times and go past my colors so that it's, even though it's not has a color, I can bring it down that way. So you can see how it's very loose, it's not exact, and I'm creating my own little look. Now I've got my little line work done on my flowers and on my leaf. Now I'm going to go ahead and work on this very like little simple line work with developing some leaves around my circle. So I'm going to be coming in and using my circle shape that I did here, and I'm going to be lightly doing some vine work. I'm holding my pen very loose so I don't have a lot of control over what I'm drawing, and just kind of using the circle as a template of where I want to put those in. Now once I have the little circle developed, I'm going to go ahead and put in some very casual leaves, very loose style, using that same kind of sketchy look to it, and developing another layer of texture. What will help make this look really kind of pretty is if you make sure your leaves are going different directions, so they're not all just going one direction. Make sure you're having some go out and change up the direction of those leaves and the stems, and that's just going to give it more of an interesting pattern when you're looking at it. So just vary up your sizes, have them going different directions, and you're going to get a great look. Now I decided I wanted to do a little butterfly in here, so I'm going to start with my head as being an oval shape. All I'm going to do is a wiggle line that comes up and then comes down, and that's going to give it that body shape that it's bending. And I'm going to include one wing up this direction, and then one wing that's coming back, and if you have room to put that next one there, add that one in, and then I give it even a little bit more dimension. And I'm going to be putting a few little antennas up. Now I have this pretty much drawn. I'm happy with how that looks. I just want to add a little bit more fun to this little this little card, and I'm going to be adding some metallic colors on it. The Master's Touch metallic colors are a great inexpensive metallic color. They'll last you a long time. They're fun to play with, and I believe I got these at Michael's. It was $16.99 for the set. I've had them for a really long time. You can tell which ones are my favorite. These two right here. I'm going to be using this bright gold, and I'm going to be just taking some of this, making a nice little puddle in the middle of my color. Watercolor is not going to look that shiny until it dries. The watercolor, the mica comes to life after it gets dry. I'm going to make a nice puddle in there. After I've made my puddle, I'm going to I'm going to use this pen, I guess, and I'm going to tap this on up and down and create a little bit of a splatter look. I thought this looked really pretty. Now if you want to take just a little bit more water, you can splash on just plain water as well, and that can create another great look too. It's a nice little finishing touch. It's not going to look too metallic-y until it dries all the way. This one you can see that I already did. It's got a little bit more prettier shine. Hopefully the camera will pick that up. But if not, just know it's there and it's super pretty. Well, let's see if I can't get my camera to come back up here. There we go. Well, that's it. I wanted to also remind you again, if you're interested, go over to my Ko-fi page, check it out. If you like this video, I'd so appreciate to have a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments what you would like to see me draw next. We're starting the month of June, so we have a whole nother series of flowers to do. We'll do some more flowers in the month of June because it is summer here in Minnesota and we should be doing some flowers. So we'll be working on some more of those, but let me know in the comment what you would like to see drawn this month as well. I'm always open to your suggestions and would like to know what you would like too. So give me a thumbs up, subscribe, ring that bell if you wouldn't mind. That will give you notifications. YouTube will give you notifications of when I put another video up. Well, that is it, my creative friends. Thanks so much for coming along and creating with me today, and hopefully you'll come back and create with me again.